Good afternoon. You're watching The Kate Fox Show, and I'm Big Mike Sangiamo.
You're watching The Kate Fox Show. I'm Kate Fox, and today I am speaking with Big Mike Sangiamo.
Yes.
And Big Mike, you are with 103.1 Max FM.
That's correct.
And you are an on-air personality. Is that what we call it nowadays?
That is one of the many roles that I fill over there for Connoisseur Media Long Island. One of their 5 radio stations is 103.1 Max FM.
And we've also seen you working for the Shark.
That's right, 94.3 The Shark, everything that rocks. And we also have Walk 97.5, real variety from the 90s, 2K and today. Long Island's place to relax, K-Joy, 98.3. And WHLI, 1100 AM, playing the hits of a lifetime.
Very nice.
Thank you.
You should get paid to use that voice.
I do. And many other things, but let's get down to business here and talk about it.
All right. So why don't we talk about your day job and how you got there? Because I heard that you are the only on-air personality at Connoisseur Media who does not have a broadcasting degree?
I don't believe that is true.
Oh.
I don't know the scholastic histories of the other on-air talents.
Fair enough.
I do believe that I came into the radio industry in a non-traditional way. My career dates back many, many years. I did some work with Walt Disney World Resort, did their college internship, and that was a long time ago.
Wow.
I've also worked in another service industry that you would go to at the end of life, if you catch my snowdrift.
Really?
Yes, I did. I did that for a couple of years. And then I started working full-time for Subway restaurants, if you could believe that. I was the director of local marketing and promotions for Subway restaurants for many, many years in Nassau County. And about 5 or 6 years ago, I had been doing a podcast for a little bit. I had done voiceovers for commercials for Subway restaurants, and I really wanted to break into the broadcast industry here on Long Island. I had been sending out resumes for many, many years, and eventually I was able to get a position on the street team with Connoisseur Media Long Island. And once there, it just took off. I worked really hard. I brought some experience to the table in working in field events. And slowly but surely, I kept moving up. And now I'm the director of local marketing and promotions for the 5 radio stations at Connoisseur Media Long Island.
Really?
Yes.
That part I didn't know.
Well, that's what we're here learning about each other.
I like it. I like it a lot.
Yes. And part of that is also being an on-air personality and doing hosting out in the field and really just trying to engage with the listeners out in the community as much as possible.
Wow. So now, okay, engage with the listeners. Because now I want to go back because you were to the street team. What on earth did you do on the street team?
For the radio station, it's the typical activities that you would see at any event, whether it was a car dealership grand opening or a restaurant or a concert. The street team, they are the street ambassadors for the radio station. Right. So you pop up a tent, you set up the music, you spin the prize wheel, you engage with the public, and you give out prizes. And of course, all of that was pre-pandemic. A lot of those activities had to be suspended or at least paused. Now, slowly but surely, we continue to get back out there and do other stuff. But really, it's the arm of the company that goes out there and does the on-site activations. That's what the street team does.
Okay. And was it fun?
It was a blast. It was a lot of fun. You get a lot of really great opportunities. No 2 events are ever the same, so it gives you a sense of there's no monotony to it. You're continuing to do something, meeting new people, and it's always a lot of fun. And who wouldn't want to be out there listening to music and talking to people and engaging with people? And really, when you give them when they win a prize, putting a smile on somebody's face.
Oh, yeah.
It's a great aspect of the job. Absolutely.
That's very cool. I like the way you frame it.
Well, thank you.
Yeah.
I'm a wordsmith.
You are. Well, okay. Now you're killing my interview because you did the whole intro, things I was going to ask you later, but now you said wordsmith, so now we're going to have to go like this.
Okay.
And so I hear tell you're a poet.
I wouldn't call myself a poet. I have written a couple of things that I'm proud of. One of them was a book that we got published a while back, and I did create a holiday story that is a poem. It's written in like the Dr. Seuss style.
Okay.
And that I have performed at different tree lightings in the town of Brookhaven's Holiday Spectacular, and it's a you can call it a poem called Santa's Lonely Helper.
Santa's Lonely Helper.
Santa's Lonely Helper, yes, that's correct.
Aw.
And it rhymes, so I guess you could call it a poem.
Well, okay. This isn't about me. Not all poetry rhymes.
Not all poetry
because
rhymes.
I don't write rhyming poetry, and I'm an award-winning poet. So.
Well, there you go. See, I have won no awards for my poem that's also a story, but maybe someday it might happen.
We might have to talk about that.
Exactly. We definitely can.
We definitely. So, okay, so Santa's Lonely Helper.
Yes.
And we are going to show the book. You know what? I don't care. I'm walking on camera because you know what? This is the book we're talking about, correct?
That is the book, yes.
And it is called The Fattest Guy in the Room, 10 Reasons Why Being Fat Sucks, and 3 Reasons Why It's Not So Bad.
That's right. Now available at a discount at breakthescale.com.
I'm sorry, what was that?
breakthescale.com. breakthescale.com.
I'm sorry, I just like hearing you say that. But we...
Kate Foss Show.
I knew as soon as we started talking that it was going to go crazy. You know what? We're going to take a quick break and we'll be right back.
This is Big Mike from 103.1 Max FM, classic hits of the 70s, 80s, and more. And you're watching The Kate Fox Show.
And we're back. And now, you had mentioned as we were talking, Mike, in the beginning, that you did a gig with Subway.
Yes.
Can you tell us about it?
Absolutely. I got my job with Subway in a very strange way. I actually started the unofficial fan club of Subway restaurants with my friends when I was 15 years old. For some strange reason, we really enjoyed going to Subway restaurants. Well, we thought the product was delicious, and back then, there weren't that many Subway restaurant locations.
Right.
When I was growing up in Queens, you had to get on a bus and go about 45 minutes to get to Kew Gardens, which is the nearest Subway restaurant to where I was.
Wow.
So to go to Subway, it was like an event. It was a thing to do. We were just hanging out. I wasn't cool growing up.
How were you not cool?
I'm still may not be cool. It depends. But other kids were like getting fake IDs and sneaking into bars and so forth. We went to Subway restaurants. And because they had 3 footlongs for $9.99. So I go there with my buddy, Jimmy, Nikki, Little Mike, and then we'd get 3 subs, we'd split them up, and they had free refills, which was another really big important part. Absolutely. And it just became this thing that my friends and I started to identify with, and then slowly, I personally identified with, and I went to school for a bunch of different other things. I had mentioned that I had gone to school to be a funeral director as well. And when I graduated funeral school, it was a crossroads. It was a fork in the road. Do I get a job in funeral service and do this thing that I wasn't really that passionate about, but I had gone to school for it? Or do I do this thing that I'm passionate about? Do I work for Subway restaurants? And I applied for Subway restaurant corporate jobs all over the country, anything that, I was willing to go anywhere to do it. Okay. And long story short, I got hired to work in the Nassau County Development Office, and I started working as a promotions coordinator and also field evaluator, somebody who visited the restaurants to make sure they were doing everything operationally correct. And I turned that into a promotions and marketing role because I saw that there was a need for local store marketing. It was something that wasn't really addressed, so I thought I could bring that to the table, and that's how I started doing restaurant events. Oddly enough, it was because I went to deliver Subway sandwiches to a radio remote. So this is when I first get my job for Subway restaurants, 2005, and I get a call from my boss, Neil Singh. He's still the development agent for Subway Restaurants of Long Island. And he says, listen, there's a radio station. They're doing an event. It's at a Petco in Levittown. go bring them Subway sandwiches, you might get on the radio, might be a thing. So I show up to this radio remote, not knowing what it was, and there's this big inflatable something, and inside there's a guy with a table and music and a prize wheel, and he's talking like he's on the radio, live from Petco. And I'm like, but he's not really on the radio. Like he was just talking on the microphone like he was live.
Got you.
So I was like, I could do that. I could do that. So I started selling my services to Subway restaurants to do grand openings and anniversary. I started the Subway restaurant street team on a fake radio station called WSUB. We said we broadcasted on 6:20 a.m. There is no 6:20. No, 5:20 a.m. 5:20 a.m. There is no 5:20 a.m. And it was WSUB, the W sub, and it was the Big Mike radio program live on the Subway radio network doing events for Subway. And I got a gigantic inflatable sandwich, the Subway mascot, and I did that for Subway for many, many years. I got to work with the research and development group. I invented 2 sandwiches that went national for the Subway restaurant chain, and I worked with them for many, many years, and even got to do some voiceovers for commercials, which eventually led me roundabout way into the radio industry, into broadcast.
Wow.
It's a wild story.
Okay. What sandwiches did you invent?
I'll start with the most memorable, and it's one of my biggest accomplishments. I had read an article that the former CEO and the co-founder of Subway Restaurants, Fred DeLuca, he passed away a couple of years ago, but he had given an interview in Fortune 500 talking about how do they keep things fresh on the local level at Subway. And he said, well, we leave some spots on the menu so that franchisees can develop their own sandwiches. Now that interview was outdated, so that wasn't a policy that they were doing, but I was inspired and I started testing recipes for sandwiches, combinations of different meats, what can I do? And I knew some people in the Subway world, so they were interested in working with me to do it. And eventually, after many, many, many rounds of different trials of different recipes, I landed on what I thought would be a fantastic sandwich for Subway restaurants. And I wanted it to be a sandwich with a story, because I'm also, from my time working with Disney, I'm a big Walt Disney guy. The story is really important. The story matters. So the story we had for the sandwich was that it was the Feast of Sangiamo. That's my last name, Sangiamo, whatever you want to say. The Feast of Sangiamo, a sandwich so big that it had to be called the Feast, and it was an Italian-American sandwich. I'll give you the whole pitch. You ready?
Oh, yeah.
It's an Italian-American sandwich created by an Italian-American, the greatest Subway fan of all time, Big Mike Sangiamo. You start building the feast in Italy with some pepperoni and Genoa salami. Then you make the long journey all the way back to America with a transitional layer of ham. Finish it off with some savory turkey breast and good old-fashioned American roast beef. When it's all said and done, over 3/4 of a pound of meat and cheese on a foot long. The Feast of Sangiamo. Now that's a sandwich. Subway, eat feast. And they thought it was good. And we started testing it after the development. Then I started working for Subway. They tested it, 1 restaurant, 5 restaurants, and then an explosion in 2007. Wow. 20,000 restaurants. Every Subway restaurant in America sold the Feast.
That's kind of cool.
For like 5.5 years, it was on the regular menu. It's on the hidden menu, and then they got rid of roast beef, but I hear some things about roast beef coming back. So, and then we're gonna bring the beef back, then we're gonna bring the Feast back. That's the plan.
That's the plan. Now, are you working behind the scenes trying to make the
magic
happen?
I still consult occasionally for Subway restaurants, but primarily my job now, my full-time job is working with Connoisseur Media Long Island and broadcast. But I still have all the elements of the Subway street team and the Subway radio thing that I did. So occasionally I still do events for them, and whenever they need some advice, from the emissary of the Subway sandwich fans, they do give me a call.
I like that. Wow. I didn't expect the whole... Wow, you made... Okay.
The other one was a meatball roni. Meatball and pepperoni. It still comes back once a year.
Really?
Yeah. I'm telling you. So as far as taste profile... Yeah, put them together. The next time, believe me, it's a thing. Get your foot-long Italian herb and cheese bread, cut it up, hinge cut. I like a U-gouge, but you can do the hinge cut. You put your meatballs down, you lay your pepperoni on top, mozzarella cheese, toast it up. If you want to add onions, you can. Some people put green peppers. I don't hang out with them, but you can. It's a great sandwich. The meatball roni. But the feast is really the
The
accomplishment.
feast is the real thing.
Yeah, the feast is the one that I'm proud of both of them, but the feast is what I talk about more. Like my license plate is feast.
Is it really?
Yes, it is.
I love it.
My Instagram handle is the Feast Man, because that's one of my claims to fame. But I don't
now you have more claims to fame now.
I do, but the Feast Man is what it was something so strange. It's still so unbelievable that it happened. That just this fat kid from Queens can create this thing that becomes part of the largest sandwich franchise on the planet. Like when they colonize the moon, there will be a Subway restaurant on it.
And what are they going to have there?
Well, hopefully they'll bring the beef back, then they'll bring the feast back. But either way, there'll be Subway sandwiches sold on the moon. So to have had that type of involvement and impact on a brand like that, just for some kid from Queens, it was all because I love the product. It really was because I really thoroughly, I don't know what stars aligned to make me love it so much, but I did, and I still do, and it's a part of who I am.
But that's
absolutely
great, and look where it took you. I mean, look, I'm screeching now too. But look where it took you. I mean, from eating Subway as a kid and now here you are. Well, now you're talking to me, so you made the big time.
This is it, the top of the mountain.
But absolutely. I mean, it was like your little you climbed up on the footlongs.
You can't place a value on the impact Subway restaurants had on my life, because I learned so much from when I spent time working at Walt Disney World, and when I got back and I started working for Subway restaurants, I applied that knowledge that I got from working with the Walt Disney Company, which there's no greater knowledge that you can get in guest relations. I applied it to Subway restaurants, and a lot of the stuff that I learned from Disney and Subway combined is what I apply in my daily life working for Connoisseur Media Long Island and the radio stations.
I really like that. Wow. You know what? I want to talk about your book, but we're going to take one more break first, and we'll be right back.
Hey, I'm Rob Rush, and you are watching The Kate Fox Show, for those that are in the know.
And we're back. And Mike, we're segueing now from sandwiches to meaty books, because what makes a man decide he's going to write this book?
That's an interesting question. It's a complicated question. I think I had always had the desire to write and publish a book.
Okay.
I can't remember what was the initial inspiration for wanting to set that goal and accomplish it. And as I was living the journey, beginning of my career, exiting college, and then working the years with Subway restaurants and doing that, I always would rely on the memories of being the funny fat kid in high school.
Okay.
So I've been overweight my entire life. It's part of who I am. It's just who I am. And I have great memories of high school being the funny fat guy and what that meant. That was the character that I played. Mm-hmm. It was important to me at some point. In the beginning of high school, I was very shy. And then at some point I decided I want to be funny. And I come from a family of people that I think are very humorous. My father is very funny with the one-liners. My brother is a lot funnier than he gives himself credit for. Even my grandmother was a very, very funny person. And it just came natural to me. So when I realized that I could be funny and I was this fat guy, I put them together and I used that as my character. And that was who I remained to be through my early 20s. And what had happened is after you turn 30, all the people that were funny fat guys in their youth, different things start to happen in your life.
Okay.
And I wanted to comment on it. I felt like I had something to say about this topic. And the book, what I always say about the book is that it'll make you laugh, it'll make you cry, and then it'll make you laugh again. And I think I started it as like a scared skinny type book.
Really?
Something that my hope was that if there was a person who was 17 or 18 or 19 years old, who was overweight or very overweight or on their way to becoming very overweight, perhaps they might read this book and maybe they won't go completely off the rails and gain quite as much weight as I did. I have recently lost a good amount of weight, but obviously I am still very overweight and I have a long way to go. But I wanted to try to highlight the challenges that I was facing, and perhaps even if one person who was in that situation, one person who was the funny fat person in school, and they would read it and go, all right, I could still be overweight and I could still be funny, or I could lose weight and still be funny, and maybe not face the physical pain issues that I was having. Because as you become into your 30s, now you're going to face some physical pains, and that was ultimately why I ended up doing something to lose weight, was because the physical pain far outweighed anything else. It was just like, it was excruciating. So this book deals with a lot of those topics.
Wow.
Growing up as an overweight person, the different things that were going through my mind, through my childhood, and how those all played into creating the character of Big Mike. And perhaps as a resource for someone who is in a similar situation, maybe they might make slightly different choices. Wow.
That's a lot. That's like a really, I want to say honorable. I don't know if honorable is quite where I'm going. It is honorable, but that's a big task you took on.
Yeah, and I think there are parts of it that are probably unrealistic, because I remember what it was like being that age and being overweight and not really, because you're not thinking 10 years from now. You're not thinking about the pain that you're going to face or any of the other challenges life is going to present to you. I also thought it was important, while that's why it breaks it down into 10 reasons why being fat sucks, but 3 reasons why it ain't so bad.
Right.
Because in addition to that, I don't like the idea that anyone would feel ashamed or bad about being overweight or the way that they look. To me, it had nothing to do about being embarrassed, because I wasn't embarrassed. As a child, I felt as though I was being told to be embarrassed. But as I grew up and I just wrapped my arms and got my arms as much around being the funny fat kid, it went a whole different direction where I really didn't care. And I still deal with those psychological issues to this day.
Of course.
But ultimately, if I wanted to use it as a method to deliver this message that goes beyond just what it's like to live in this America as someone who's overweight.
Wow. But you know what? You speak to everyone in a way, because listen, when we're growing up, we have the Barbies. The girls have the Barbies with the waist that's this thin and the rest of her that's this big, and the long blonde hair and the tippy toes, and even today we all the models, men, women, whatever, and you look at that and go, I don't want to. So yeah. I mean that's a huge issue for everyone.
And I think it gets progressively worse with the way social media is used.
Yes.
It's a big problem, and I don't think this is particularly like specifically a solution, but I did receive initially when I first wrote it and got it out there. I got some good press on it initially, and I did get to sell a good amount of books, and I did receive some nice letters from people that had read it, and most of them because they had similar experiences to me growing up. I think like that generation, if their parents were in the generation my parents were in, they had the same old jokes that they would say about the kid, and you got to go to Omar the tent maker to get your clothes, and a lot of those things. So there's a lot of shared experiences, but ultimately the real reason why I wrote the book, or the catalyst for writing the book, and this is another thing that you probably don't know, is that I was on The Tonight Show with Jay Leno, and so I was the subject of a student film a friend of mine's son was going to NYU Film School, and he was approached by they were approached by the Tonight Show to do Jay Leno's film festival. So I was like his muse, this guy Sanjay Singh, and he's still a filmmaker.
Oh my God!
Sanjay Singh.
Oh my God! We'll talk later.
We're gonna talk more about that.
We'll talk off camera on that because
I was like his muse. He put me in everything he was doing. So he approached me. Hey, listen, we have this chance to write a 90-second movie, and if we win, we could be on the Tonight Show. So we came up with some ideas. You had to use certain words, and I said, listen, if we want to win this thing, we got to be funny. If we want to be funny, you got to put me in a bath of milk, in my underwear. And that's what we did, and we won, and we went on to the Tonight Show. And now I was always the guy. I would not wear my shirt I would wear a shirt at the pool. I never wanted to be shirtless. Right. And that was my whole life up until my early 30s. And here I am now. I'm on the studio of the Tonight Show, and here it is for millions and millions and millions of people to see me with no shirt on, bathing in milk. Wow. And as the show ended, I meet Jay Leno as we're walking backstage, and I made the joke to him. I said, it's probably going to be hard getting dates now after that. And he said, welcome to showbiz, kid. And it was weird. It was like a weight was lifted off my shoulders. And I said, I want to talk about this. And that's why I wanted to put myself on the cover with no shirt on, because I knew there was no longer nothing to be embarrassed about. I was fat, and wearing the shirt at the beach wasn't going to change that. And I talk about that. That's one of the reasons why being fat sucks, because everybody knows why you're wearing the shirt. Okay? All the kids out there, stay in school, and if you're going to the pool, don't wear the shirt. Because you stand out like a sore thumb when you're wearing the shirt. The end.
That's a good lesson.
Yeah.
Wow.
Many years of horrible experience.
Wow. Well, which is not a good lesson. Well,
it's the truth.
Look where you've come.
This is where I am. I'm on the Kate Fox show. It's wild.
So, is there something else that you would like to impart to anyone who is watching that we haven't touched on?
There's a lot, and I would love to talk more about it. Maybe we can do this again sometime. I really did have a fantastic time. I'm larger than life, so you can't fit everything into just one episode of the Kate Fox show. I would like to say that you can hear me Midnight Snacks on Max 103.1 Max FM, weeknights at midnight. Friday nights, occasionally, on 94.3 The Shark, Everything That Rocks, 7 to 10, live from the studio at the Paramount, brought to you by New York Cancer and Blood Specialists. And I'm lucky to occasionally be a character on the Anna and Raven show on Walk 97.5.
Oh, wow.
And that's real variety from the 90s, 2K, and today.
We are going to do this again. I want to say thank you so much for sitting down to talk with me.
It's my pleasure. It really is.
And I'm having a blast. And I mean, check him out. Big Mike Sangiamo.